Hey, how's it going, YouTubers? This is Doug Woods again. This is lesson 7 of my series. So I bought my first guitar, now what? And we've gone over a lot of stuff at this point for the beginning guitars. We've talked about the components of the guitar. We've talked about multiple methods of tuning the guitar. That can be seen in episode 6, as well as in the early episodes 1 or 2. Where the different methods were explained. In the very beginning, basically what I showed you was tune it to pitch to somebody else who is in pitch, if you're playing along with somebody, or use an electronic tuner. And the last episode, I showed you the different ways of tuning your guitar to itself. You still need to get a bass if you're going to do it that way, with at least one of the strings in which you show, or which you tune that string perfectly, whether it's to a different instrument or you could use an electronic tuner, and then you could proceed with the 2 techniques I showed you in the last video. The good reason, or a good reason to do that in the beginning, is that is also ear training. You're going to hear things out of pitch, and you're going to then figure out how to bring that into pitch, and you're going to be using your ears as that comparison. So you're training your brain on what a particular note sounds like. Okay, so that's a great thing to do. In one of the previous lessons, we talked about extending the C scale. We had learned in the beginning, I believe, lesson 3, 1 octave C major scale, and then we've extended it across the 6 strings. When we're doing our exercises, we've been using alternate picking. That's going to continue. What I'm going to do in this episode is teach you. We also talked about a chromatic scale, where you're playing using each of your 4 fingers, 1 fret, a half step apart. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the way up and down the strings, moving them down in pitch towards the nut of the guitar as your finger strength increases, until you can play them in first position, which is going to be what requires the most amount of strength, because it takes the most amount of tension to clearly fret those notes. And that has all to do with pulling down from the nut right there. It's nice and easy here in the middle where I started, you guys. It gets difficult as you go this way. Alright? Now, what we're going to do to expand this, and I picked this up from a online instructor that I got the video a long time ago, and unfortunately I can't remember his name. One of these days I'll dig it up and I'll make sure that I add that in a comment or something like that, because he had a pretty good series. But the one takeaway that I got for beginning instructors, beginning students, is taking that chromatic scale, and then you can continue on with any scale that you want to practice this way, and using this technique. The theory that he had came up with, or what he had stumbled across, was the fact that when you're training the neurological pathways to your hands, both left and right, and your fingers, especially in your left hand, that happens through repetition. You can stumble along a passage like this run right here, for example. Something like that. Over and over and over and over, making mistakes until you get it right. Or you can slowly go through it, and then you can double up either right hand technique or on the left hand technique. And as far as the nerve impulses, it's going to be the same. So you can take that pattern. So let's say what I was doing was a little bit of a minor scale. I was going to do something fancy, and I just decided to play a little bit of a minor, which we haven't covered yet. So I'll do this exercise off the chromatic and then the major scale in this part of the demonstration. So at the chromatic, we'll start at the back here at the 7th fret or B string. You can, if you're wanting to work your right hand, which you're going to need to, because I know you guys are wanting to strum chords and all that other kind of stuff. You don't want to just be playing, I got it, I've been there. Instead of just going 1, 2, 3, 4, down, up, down, up, down, up, add to this. Say do it 8 times per finger. So now you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then drop that down. Maybe do it 6 times, 4 times, 2 times, what have you. So you get, if you were doing it 2 times, you'd get. Okay, so let me go ahead and start the other video, or my other camera, which is on my phone, so I can try to get a close-up of that real quick. And I'll do a close-up of the right hand, since this is a right hand exercise. Alright, so what we're doing here with the right hand is multiple pickings. So you got and so on. Now when you want to do your left hand training for that particular exercise, you're going to do what you call a hammer-on pull-off sequence. And a hammer-on is nothing more than just what it sounds like. You're going to take your finger and make it a hammer onto that string. If you do it hard enough and clearly enough, and you get that index finger or whichever finger you're dealing with in the proper position on that fret, you'll accomplish a good sounding note. Alright, if you're off, you obviously won't. Alright, so you tap on that note. You can call it tapping, it's a hammer-on. When you release it, they call that a pull-off. Okay, so multiple hammer-ons would be this. When you're pulling off to nothing, they don't really call that a pull-off. Where a pull-off comes on is if we were doing something, which I'll teach you later, in which you hammer on and you pull off to another note. Okay, that's a little more advanced. We'll talk about that later. So when you're doing your left hand exercise, say on the chromatic scale, you would do each finger multiple times. You're not even worried about your right hand. You just work your right hand, it's tired, let it rest. The other great thing about this is your mind is not split between 2 tasks at this point. You worked your right hand, your brain got to focus on your right hand. You're working your left hand, your brain gets to focus on your left hand. Okay? So do it multiple times. Go to the next string, the next fret, next finger, same thing. And then next string. And so on. Alright, the great thing about that is you can also diagnose any problems that you're having. Because if you can't get good sounds, there's a mechanic problem with your finger that you can address and you could probably sort out on your own. Okay? Then you can go back to playing that scale, or whether it's the chromatic scale, the major scale, or something more like the minor scale that we're going to teach, that I'll teach you in the next lesson. It'll be cleaner, it'll be faster, you'll be stronger on both. You can mesh those two together a whole lot faster when you learn them separately. And I wasn't sure when I saw this guy's video if he was right or not, but I gave him a chance and I tried it, and at least it was right for me. I could take something and I could learn my left hand, learn the right hand picking sequence, do those multiple times independently, mesh it together, and I could pick it up faster than I could if I was trying to hash through the struggles of getting both right all at the same time. Because sometimes you'd mess up the right hand with the picking pattern, sometimes you mess up the left hand, or you'd mess up with both of them, and it was hard to sort out. It would just take a whole lot longer. Okay, now, like I said, that same process can be used to your other scales that you know. You can do that with C. So we know that starting at the 6th string, or the low E string, you can play C here at the 9th fret, right? So if you're going to do C major, you can still go. Ah, boy, who needs to practice? You guys or me? that was a lot of right hand work right there. The nice thing about it is you got a lot of time to think, for you guys that are just learning, or guys like me that aren't paying attention, where the next position for the next finger is going to be. All right, you're not trying to rush through something and keep up with that right hand while you're working that right hand. Then you go through the same thing, tap that out. Okay, you can do that all the way up and down across the strings like I showed you in the multiple different positions when I showed you how to extend those scales. Later on I'll show you that any scale, and so we'll just talk about C major right now, it exists all over the guitar. Anywhere those notes that are in that scale exist, there are going to be patterns that are appropriate for that. So if you wanted to start from each degree in that scale, each interval, we know in a diatonic scale, I explained to you guys in the very beginning, the major scale has 7 notes. Okay, that means there's 7 positions if you were going to start on any given string. So we always normally refer to a scale position starting off of that low E string, that 6th string. There are 7 positions, and then they start to repeat as you go up the guitar. There are 7 positions of that C scale. Right now, that's kind of intermediate stuff for you guys, right? You got enough to worry about just knowing the 2 positions of C here, starting at the 9th fret on the low E string, or the 6th string, and then here starting at the 3rd fret on the 5th string. If you know those 2, and then start moving around, finding these roots and realizing that pattern exists, that's plenty for you guys right now at this point in time. Okay, so just a refresh so you know what I mean. Alright, so we know that if the C is at the 8th fret, a B is going to be at the 7th, because there's no sharp and flats between B and C, which is at the 7th fret. Okay, 1/2 step lower in pitch than C. So then that means it's going to start right here on the 2nd fret on the 5th string. Okay, go ahead and work those, incorporating that left and right hand separation exercise, and I'll see you in the next lesson.